Go.
All right, Terrence Popp here with another episode of Live from the Lair. All right, now I've got a lot of requests to cover all the craziness that's going on in the Middle East in regards to the Palestinians and the state of Israel. All right, now I just want to go on the record here. I don't like, nor do I dislike, nor do I hate the Jewish people. Just like I don't like, I dislike, and I don't give a shit about the Palestinians.
Tryna go out, get a lady every single day. If she ain't getting freaky, get up out my way. So if it's getting routine, just another day.
You ever wonder what it would look like if Teddy Ruxpin and Notorious B.I.G. had a test tube baby? Feast your eyes.
I'm a hitter, I'm a spray 'em all. I'm a shooter, I'm a hitter, I'm a spray 'em all.
Shameless Dab is back on Redonkulas.com promoting his new remix titled Rashida Jones. Yep, there she is. Giggity. Click on the link in the description to give it a listen and show a bear a good time. Space Ghost.
Eat my meat like a diet keto.
I'm just going to be covering, a little bit of stuff that happened in the past that brought us here. Basically, towards the end of World War II, a lot of Jewish individuals moved to this, country of Palestine, and they were welcomed with open arms. And then World War II ended, and there was a huge flood. And somewhere in the late 40s, they basically said, fuck it, we're having our own country, and they ran the Palestinians out, and they're pretty much consolidated right here in this portion that faces the Mediterranean Sea. All right, and they've been fighting back ever since, which, I'm not going to say they're wrong, and I'm not going to say they're right. They have a claim to be royally pissed off that happened. But at the end of the day, what happened here is what has happened over and over again throughout all of human history. We are hairless, evil monkeys, and we're plagued with the 7 deadly sins, which I'm not going to go through them all, but that's just the way it is. So basically, the state of Palestine ceased to exist. The Palestinians were put here, and the Jewish community or Jewish population took the rest of Israel. Now, there's been many wars. I'm not going to go into them all, where basically virtually all of the states surrounding Israel who are Muslim, waged war. There was a huge amount of loss of life, tanks, and so forth. But the Jewish people are still here. Let's be honest. They wouldn't still be there if it wasn't for the United States helping them out. And that might be coming to an end with the new basically installed dictator that we have sitting in the chair of the president in the Oval Office right now. I seriously doubt that individual was basically nominated as the most popular person ever during the huge ice cream social where there was all kinds of craziness going on. I can't go into detail because YouTube will kick me in the ass, but it is what it is. All right, now you see here I have range brackets. You don't really get this in the news. They're just saying they're firing a bunch of rockets, and they kind of gloss over the whole thing. But, I'm going to go into more detail because that's what I do here at the Lair. All right, so in, the Palestinian sector, you have 3 cities. You have Khan, Gaza, and Rafi. All right, I'm not even going to say their whole names because I don't care. And if I mispronounce anything here, again, I don't care. And if it's not spelled right, you know the drill. The Palestinians have been smuggling weapons in since, forever. And they've been coming from all over the globe. All right, now you see here on this first range bracket, you have the Qassam missile with a range of roughly 17 kilometers. And there are basically 2 towns that are in Israel which are in range, which is Ashkor and Sedrat. I don't know if they're spelled correctly or if I'm saying them right. I don't care. All right, and a lot of these missiles here were made by the Palestinians, and I'll talk about how they do that in the next board. All right. Next range bracket here is the Grad missile range, 20 kilometers, and that one can reach all the way up to Hadra, which is just short of Zikrin up at the top here. This missile, the Palestinians can make this, so this is really no big deal for these two range brackets. All right, because the missiles that they make are not that complicated, and they basically run on potassium nitrate and sugar. All right, so 20 kilometers is pretty much the max range you're going to be able to push out of that homemade technology. As we go into the other stuff here, these missiles were definitely smuggled in. Where they came from, I'll cover on the next board, but let's face it, when there's a will, there's a way. All right, now the Israelis did the same shit in the late 40s. They smuggled in all kinds of weapons. They bought stuff on the black market. They prepared, and then they basically took the country of Israel away from the Palestinians. Israelis should know this game because they wrote the chapter on it, and the Palestinians read that book, and they're using it against them. All right, then the next range bracket we have an upgraded Grad missile, 40K, and this one can reach Damor and Zikron, and possibly hit Israel because it's like right on the edge of this range fan. Okay, now these are not guided rockets. They just put them on an azimuth and set them off. And when you get into these rockets, they're really big and they have to be put in with heavy machinery. So odds are, I bet you 10 to 1, the Israelis know where these launchers are because they keep an eye on what's going on here, especially since 2012 and all the missile attacks that have taken place since then. All right, finally, you have the final range bracket. Now this one can go all the way over into Jordan, which is over in this section of the map. And it's basically the FAR J7 with a 75 kilometer range, and the K Habar, which is 160 kilometer range. They will have no problem reaching Jerusalem, which is the capital of Israel. And for whatever reason, we have fought over that accursed piece of fucking shit land since they started writing the goddamn Bible. Sorry, Lord. It's absolutely worthless. I don't even know why they want to do this shit. I think we should just nuke Jerusalem from orbit, and that'll settle everything. There's been some strikes in Gaza. Israel hasn't taken off the gloves completely. They've hit some buildings. They've given fair warning for people to vacate. And if they didn't, it's on them. Now, what the Palestinians are doing is they know they are not going to win the ground war. What are they trying to do? They're trying to fight with propaganda. And they're firing, listen, I don't understand why they do this. But under the Geneva Convention, there are certain places which are not to be targeted, and churches, hospitals, synagogues, what have you. A few more, I don't know the whole list. Unless you fire from those things, and then they lose the protected status. And that's what they're doing. Israel's firing back, and a lot of innocent people are getting smoked. Because in reality, I really don't think the Palestinians give a shit about their populace. They're doing their thing because the religion of peace is all about war. And I can't recall ever having world peace anywhere where Islam has taken a hold. I'm just saying. All right, we're going to move over to the other board here. All right, so this is the Palestinian weapons. I don't have their order of battle, so I can't really tell you what they're going to do other than if Israel comes in, they're going to basically fight defense in depth and delay and try to cause as much pain and misery and death to the Israeli forces as they possibly can. All right, now we talked about the Qassam missile, which is 17 kilometer range, and you have the Grad missile, which is a 20 kilometer range, and the upgraded Grad missile, which is a 40K range. Now, these missiles start to get really long. You're talking, 12 feet, 15 feet, and somewhere around 20 feet for the 20-foot long missiles is a big missile. And they might even be a little longer for the 160-kilometer range. Now, there's other missiles in here. I didn't put them all on the board because, they all work the same. You set them off and they fall into the range brackets pretty closely right here. So I'm not going through the whole rigmarole of all the rockets they have. Now, the type of weapons that the Palestinians have is they have AK platforms of all types. They have the AK-47, the AK-74, RPK, the PKM. All right, they have all of that shit. All right, because the Kalashnikov rifle is the most exported rifle ever, and virtually every civil war, revolution, or war has been fought with them since they were created in the late 50s. Okay, they also have Dishka Russian 50 cals. It's basically like our Ma Deuce, except it doesn't fire as smoothly or as accurately as our Ma Deuce, which was originally designed in the late 1880s, early 1890s, and we're still using that design today because it is fucking awesome. All right, I'm going off in the weeds here. So they have a whole bunch of these. They have wire-guided anti-tank missiles that came from Russia. How did they get here in Palestine? I'm going to tell you right now. If you give any Islamic faction weapons, no matter what they're fighting for or who they're fighting or why they want them, sooner or later those weapons are going to be spread throughout the entire Islamic world, especially where conflict is happening. So I'm sure the Russians were supporting the Syrians, and the Syrians basically don't like Israel, and the wire-guided anti-tank missiles are in play. And that goes, there's rumor there's a few tow systems there as well. These wire-guided anti-tank missiles can incapacitate any modern tank and cripple or kill that tank permanently, even if it's a top-tier tank. A lot of the top-tier tanks, they're really cool, but we've taken armor pretty much as far as we can take it, and if that is hit by one of these systems, that weapon system is done. Now, a lot of the tanks in the Israeli forces have nifty whiz-bang devices that are designed to destroy anti-tank missiles before they actually make it to the tank. Also, they have a lot of fin-foul platforms. I'm pretty sure that they got these when the British got rid of theirs, and the market was just a glut with fin-fouls back in the day. You could literally buy one for $200 to $250. I personally don't like that weapon system because it's clunky. It's fucking heavy, and I don't like the side locking mechanism that weapon system uses. That's just a side note. All right, they have World War II Mausers. They have AR platforms of all types. All right, so they have a lot of our AR platforms in their, army, which is more like a National Guard camp. Not that the National Guard's bad, but, it is what it is. They also have SA-18 and SA-7 soldier-fired anti-air assets. They're called man-pads. They're really good against helicopters, not so good against fast movers, because most fast movers use flares, and a lot of helicopters do as well. And these have infrared seeking heads on them, which they go after the heat sources, and that could easily be scrambled. The SA-18s are a lot more reliable than the SA-7s. You're probably going to get a better fire to hit ratio with those than you will the SA-7. But if you are directly underneath an airframe and it's inside of 1,500 feet to 2,500 feet, and you let go one of these missiles, you have a pretty good chance at hitting it. All right, they also have mortar platforms. They have the 60, the 81, the 120 millimeter platforms, and plus additional ones that were provided by the Syrians who got them from Russia. All right, now I have been mortared by 60 and 80 millimeter mortars before. They suck. But, you know, if it's a 60 millimeter, it's basically a complicated grenade launcher that can fire the missiles out to 3,500 meters accurately. If you dick with the cheese charges, you could probably take it to 4 clicks. I wouldn't advise that because you could be operating, you will be operating out of the design specs of your particular mortar too. You have the 81 millimeter mortar, which has a range out to like 5,800 to 6,500, depending upon the modern or the older variants. This is the equivalent of having a grenade launcher that fires 2 grenades at the same time, so they arrive together. All right, the main damage that this does is basically shrapnel. You don't really use it on any kind of installations where you want to do a lot of damage to standing structures. Now, the 120 millimeter mortar, it's a whole other animal. Of all of the mortar attacks I've ever been in, I've had maybe half a dozen 120 millimeter mortar attacks in my general vicinity. That shit is very scary. You can destroy armored vehicles with that, especially if they're direct hits at the top. They will go through roofs. You can fire them into apartment buildings. They will go through 1 or 2 floors before detonating. Depends on how you set up the charge. These are very deadly. And then they also have the platter charges, which were coming into favor when I was in Iraq towards the end of 2004. And basically what that is, it's a round copper disc. It can be anywhere from 4 millimeters to 1.5 inches thick. They put TNT, C4, what have you, behind it. And then the center of that circle, they put the blasting cap. Now what happens when that goes off is that platter is basically deformed into a projectile, and all of that exploding C4 is giving it velocity. It's a hypervelocity round, and it will shatter through most armor systems. In Iraq in 2004, they were getting their hands on the new RPG-7 ammunition that was known to actually make it through the Abrams armor, and it disabled quite a few tanks. I was there. I watched the recovery. I talked to the people involved. They told me the deal. I was like, holy shit, that sucks. All right, now, I didn't put on here the RPG-7s because wherever you find AK platforms, you're going to find RPG-7s. And I believe they have the better models that fire the new types of ammunition capable of seriously damaging tanks, if not destroying them outright. Now, I know Palestine has been basically embargoed and blocked off from the world for years. And those bastards, God bless them, are basically doing the same thing the Viet Cong did in Vietnam War. All right, not only, and we got Jordan, Egypt, Iran, Russia, and the Sudan participating and getting weapon systems to the Palestinian people. It used to come in through Egypt. Egypt is cracking down on the underground tunnels, so it has to come through sea, or people have to take other routes to smuggle the stuff in, which can be done. All right, if there's a will, there's a way. You'll figure it the fuck out. And those guys, if one thing I could say about the entire Islamic world is they are very adaptive, they're very resourceful, they have patience, and if given enough time, they will fuck you up, period. All right, so you need to be careful. All right, now they're making their own ammunition, their own munitions. They have metal shops, they have lathes, they're doing all kinds of cool stuff. They're basically salvaging some World War I ships off their coast, and they have literally recovered tons upon tons of 5-inch shells, 12-inch, 10-inch, gun shells. I mean, that might be World War I, but that shit still is pretty fucking wicked, especially since those munitions have been in the ocean and they're in shells, so they're sealed. it is what it is. Now they take one of those arty shells, they basically strip all the barnacles off it, they lathe it down, they put a new fuse on it, and they build, basically the rocket tube out of a bunch of pipes that were left behind by Israel for some of their failed colonies colonies or cities they're trying to set up, which are closer to Gaza. And they're laving those down to turn those into basically the body of these rockets, and they're mixing their own propellant, but they can only really get about 20 kilometers out of those homemade rockets. Now, what they're trying to get at here is they're trying to overwhelm Israelis' Iron Dome. All right, now the Iron Dome, from the information I'm getting, it's a 1/3, 2/3 rule. It's basically intercepting 1/3 of all the munitions fired at the major cities within Israel. So for every 3 missiles fired, one is getting intercepted and 2 are hitting. Now, the missiles for that Iron Dome are insanely expensive. You have to have the radar ready to go. It's probably similar to a Q-36 we had in Iraq, which can detect any small projectile over, I think, 40 millimeters, fired into the air. And then they do counter battery. Then they have a command vehicle, and then that controls the missiles. Now, I don't know if they have the high rate of fire whiz guns that we had in Iraq that were used to intercept mortar fire, 4-inch mortars and so forth. And that's just a weapon that fires either 30 caliber, 5.56, or slightly larger munitions at ludicrous speed, causes a cloud of projectiles, and sometimes it can actually hit the projectile coming down and detonate it. I've seen it happen in 2004 when I was near the flagpole on Victory. They literally hit an 81 millimeter mortar round in the air. It detonated, and when it landed to the ground, you had the tail and part of the body. The rest of it had detonated in air. So it is what it is. So my outlook on this is simply this. They're going to run out of rockets. All right, they've already fired thousands upon thousands of them. I really don't know how many of the longer range ones they've fired. These are in short supply, so I'm thinking they're not firing them all at once. But we will see more of these as the conflict grows. Because the ones out here are a little more accurate, and they want to hit the big kahuna, which is Jerusalem. All right, it is what it is. Now, hopefully you guys enjoy this breakdown of exactly what's going on over there. You're not getting this in our media, so I figured I'd cover it for you. So with that being said, talk to you later. Fuck off.